Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tuesday training for practitioners. I'm excited to be here today. As always, I feel like for those of you in the US, it feels like a Monday. I had to keep reminding myself today's Tuesday. We are definitely here for Tuesday training, and we are at the start of a new month. This month, we're working through muscles and movement. So, muscles and movement is the focus of the month. It also is the name of the course of the month, which is really exciting inside our academy and inside our club for the month. We got Anna coming in live and in person right now. And those of you who are, hey, Anna, those of you who are here on YouTube, I can see you. I'm happy that you're all here as well. Please feel free to use the chat while you're here, and I will happily engage with you and answer questions while we go. We are going to talk about muscles and movement today as we move through. The reason that I like this topic for all of us manual and movement practitioners alike is because when we understand muscles and how they're designed to move, it matters to creating pain relief. So if we know muscles, but we don't know how they move, or we know how to move, but we don't know the muscles that are doing the job, then we're missing a gap, an important gap in alleviating pain for the clients that we're in service to. So I love talking about muscles and movement for both manual and movement practitioners. And this particular course that we have is it's kind of dense and heavy. I'm laughing not because I'm being cheeky about it, but it's dense and heavy because there's a lot to cover, right? We all know that there's like more than 600 muscles in the body, and they all have a really important action and a really important relationship with each other. So I want us to focus this month as we're moving through and starting with today, muscles as an orchestra. So they're moving together as an orchestra, and what does that actually mean? What it means shorthand for those of you who are navigating pain with your clients is we don't want to just target an upset muscle. We no longer want to do that because targeting an upset muscle means we don't actually know what caused it to be upset or who it's in relationship with that might also be upset, that makes the guy who's upset look like he's the problem, but actually he's the only one trying to help, but he's calling out for some help too. So we want to really get clear on that this month as we move through muscles and movement. Again, welcome to everybody who's new here. I know that there's many new people who have joined us on the YouTube channel here for Tuesday training and for other goodies, and a warm welcome to you. I'm delighted that you're here. I am your host for the hour each week live as we meet here. I've been a clinical practitioner for 30 years, and I also lead a movement of elite practitioners who are raising the standards of orthopedic care in the world, and it's a perfect time for us to be doing that. So welcome to everybody. Glad that you're here. Glad that you're returning. Anna, thanks for being in club seats with me today. I'm happy to answer questions live and in person for you as well. And of course, everybody else, please feel free to use the chat and keep questions coming. A side note about the chat, YouTube's changed a little bit, and it used to be that the questions that would come up in the chat would show up in the comment section after we were done being live. So when the video was available for you on replay, and it doesn't look like that's happening anymore. So I'm going to continue to read the questions out loud just so that anybody who's here watching on a replay can actually hear the question and then also the answer that goes with it, because I think there'd be more value there for you. And we are grateful to YouTube. We love that YouTube allows us to have this platform. And also we're self starters here and self-supporting. So we're doing this all on our own. If there's value here for you and you want to like this video or share it with another practitioner, I'd be super grateful to you for your support around that. All right. Muscles and Movement is a 25-hour CE course in our academy. It's also the course for the month inside our practitioner members club. And it's the topic that we're going to cover for all of September here. We're lucky we have 5 Tuesdays in September. Can you guys handle it? 5 of me this month. And and so we're going to dive into muscles the whole month, which I think 5 is generous and always never enough, right? Because there's just so much to muscles. Couple things that I love about muscles. First of all, I just love them. I just love them. I feel like they're people. And so I like having relationships with them and understanding them and what they need and how they communicate. Just like all of us, we communicate very differently. It doesn't mean that we're wrong in how we communicate or that someone who doesn't understand us is a bad listener. It just means that we get to lean in and communicate, which is a beautiful dovetail to what we talked about last week on calibrating our listening skills and increasing our listening skills, and how that is an undervalued, really important skill for all of us, always has been, and definitely increasing now as we're all turning to non-humans to communicate with, to get our answers from. Hey, Debbie, I'm glad that you're here. Nice to hear from you. So I would like you to, if you're open to it, I would like you to create a relationship with muscles as well, so that you can feel like you're in a relationship with them where you're both getting your needs met. And that's how we can be in prime service to support the people that come to us as clients and patients to get them out of pain. Most of the time, this is super interesting. Most of the time, pain shows up in a muscle, and it's not the muscle that's the problem. And we know that from one of the laws of the body. 90% of the pain in the body is referred from somewhere else. Memorize that like a mantra so that you remember where you're going to focus. 90% of the pain in the body is referred from somewhere else, which means if someone points at their pain point and you go at that spot to try to serve them, you have a 10% chance of succeeding at getting rid of their pain. So don't do that. Give yourself a 90% chance of winning and go anywhere else, almost anywhere else. But you want to be thoughtful about where you're going to go and where you're going to, what part of the body you're going to work on. And that's why I want you to have a relationship with muscles so that you understand what they're trying to tell you, how they got into that conversation in the first place, who they're communicating for, and how do you know when they respond, if they're responding with affirmative, yes, I'll take more of that, or if they're responding with, oh no, that doesn't really work for me. And I notice that when I'm working clinically with practitioners, clients are in the space, practitioners are in the space, and we're all working together on a case study, what I notice is that the feedback that the body gives is often still misunderstood. So that's a huge skill set to build. What is the feedback from the body? And the starting point of that, the Lego block, if you will, is to understand muscles and how they communicate. So if you understand muscles, you know what they are, you know where they are, you know what they do, and you know how to identify when they're not doing what they're supposed to do. Then you can start making deeper claims in the feedback that they're giving you in the moment while you're working on them. And sometimes we go too far too fast into that point, and we start letting the muscle do all the talking, and then that's dictating our treatment plan. And I know that that feels like it's a shortcut. It's actually not a shortcut. It's going to slow you down because you want to know the nature of muscles when they're working well, and you want to know the nature of muscles when they get into duress. And those are two different bodies of information. Typically, once we're practitioners and we're in the field working, we're looking at and working with and interfacing with muscles that are in duress when we're working as pain specialists, and it's still too many steps too far ahead. It doesn't mean slow down and take 100 years. It just means know what the parts are, know how they work, and then know what happens when they go wrong, because that's a different communication. And that's part of like a deepening relationship. When everything's good and you're in the honeymoon phase, communication feels easy. Everything you say is lovely. Everything they say is lovely. Everything sounds good. It feels good. You feel free to talk. But then when you hit a glitch, oh my gosh, everything feels like the whole game might end because it gets a little trickier. It's a different style of communicating when things are in tension. Just like they are with people, same thing goes with muscles. So rather than dive into the problem spot with a muscle first understand the relationship when everything's kosher, because that will help you understand, this doesn't look the same, and be open with curiosity instead of panicked about what might have just gone wrong. So we're going to we do cover 600 some muscles in the course. We're probably not going to cover each one of them in detail throughout this month, but I'm going to give you some overviews here in Tuesday training that's going to shed some light on how to see muscles in their happy phase and in their trying phase, and then what you might want to consider so that you can build a solution for them. That's what we're going to work on. Okay. I had a note here on my paper. I wanted to not forget this. One of our advanced Schatz method practitioners just posted this in our club about muscles and movement. And I happen to know that Katie took the course a few times. But it's not the focus. The focus is on the course, and I'm going to read to you what she said. But what I really want to share with you is Katie was already very trained when we met and when she came into the Schatz method. She was already a corrective exercise specialist and was already doing, all kinds of incredible work as a movement provider and also serving clients. So to hear this from her about the course really says a lot about what we cover. And my main objective when I'm teaching you guys anatomy is something that's applicable and approachable and real. so that it all feels like you can take that information and have it be your knowledge instead of just something you're supposed to be memorizing for some other purpose. So here's what Katie said in our club. After going through muscles and movement, muscles transformed from being a Latin word that I couldn't pronounce and a picture on a page to friends with personalities, relationships, and support requests. This is such a fantastic course. Thank you, Katie, for sharing that with all of us in the club. I love that for you. And I love that for all of us. One of the things, hi, Sophia Cake. Go, Gina. Woo woo. Thank you. One of the things that I stress at the beginning of that course, and I want to echo here as well, is that when we become really fascinated with anatomy and we do start memorizing our pieces parts, we get comfortable then with the language that, the names of muscles, for example. And I love that for us. I want you to name your muscles. I don't want you to just say on the back of the body, where? What muscle? What's it supposed to be doing? Like, I will always quiz you for that. And then you guys get really proficient, and then I love it. And then we're in this, fruitful conversation. But what we can sometimes forget when we get comfortable with the names of muscles is that they're technically they're Latin. They're named in Latin, which is a language that no one speaks. It's a beautiful language. I love it. I wish we all still spoke it, but it's currently not even being spoken readily in most communities on the planet, which means that if we start lobbing out Latin terms, which are just the names of muscles, but they're not just the names of muscles, they're Latin terms. And as we throw the Latin terms out into our treatment space with the client that we're in service to, who may also be in pain and not able to hear you clearly, what we've actually done is we've ostracized them from that conversation. And not only is it because they don't know the Latin and they don't know the parts, and they also don't know what they do. And there's a good chance they don't if you didn't until I quizzed you. But the other piece of it is that when we ostracize inadvertently, when clients feel ostracized by something we've said or not included them in the conversation, about a conversation about their own pain that's in their own body, it's even more distressing, even on a subconscious level, because they're literally left out of the conversation about their own vessel that inherently we know we should know about so that we can be in service to it. So it actually adds fear and some stress to their experience when we're throwing out anatomical terms in Latin. So, and this is, again, a dovetail from what we talked about last week in our other coursework and our other focus point, but of course they all roll together here. So here's what I want to offer you guys as you're moving through muscles and movement and you're memorizing muscles and what they do and you're creating relationships with them and you feel really happy about them, and I want you to. When you can name a muscle, you should. You should memorize them, and that's part of your memorization is by naming it. And also, the accuracy in which you speak matters, even when your clients don't completely understand what you're saying. And here's the ad. When you name an anatomical part, I want you to immediately follow up with or include in the same sentence something that would be understandable to the person you're speaking to, especially if they're in pain, so that they can be in the conversation. Something simple as, you can call out a muscle like gluteus maximus, and most of us would say glute max, right? Because now we're like, I'm hanging with my homie. He's glute max. Yeah, cool. Got it. Great. I'm glad you feel comfortable and confident about that. Most clients might know glute max, but some of them might not. So what you want to immediately do in that statement is, as you address glute max, you say he's the biggest hip muscle on the back of your hip and point to it. Just put your hand on your booty. And so what that does is it gives someone's kinesthetic learning awareness about where in the body you're talking about, and it finishes the sentence on something that their mirror neurons initially did not understand what you said, and it includes them in the conversation. It's a way of being super generous with them in your description of what's happening. And then oftentimes I always ask, did that make sense? Or does that resonate with you? I'll ask them to confirm so that the client doesn't feel like they're supposed to know, but then they didn't know, and then they're just kind of nodding. as I'm talking. So always ask, especially when you recognize that you're adding Latin terms or any other type of orthopedic phrasing into what you're talking about. Just make sure they feel included in the conversation. You'll get further faster if they're on board because you're literally dealing with them and their body. It's not just you in the treatment space. And we've talked about that before as well in our partnering conversation. So all that to say, I love that Katie said, yeah, it used to just be like pictures on a page and a bunch of Latin words. It is for our clients too. And we want to create a relationship and be excited about muscles and then deliver that excitement with the clarity to someone who didn't study muscles and movement, especially if it's their muscles and their movement that you're addressing. So that's like our foundational introduction to muscles and movement and how we immediately apply that in our client work to get better results. That's what we're here for, is to just get as good results as we possibly can. And it's possible to get excellent results in a short period of time. Okay, so let's talk muscles and what's common about them, common knowledge, and also what goes wrong with them. And we're going to walk through one example here today, and we're going to walk through all of it so you can see everything that's included in a muscle. And then I'll also leave us time definitely for some Q&A. So Anna, it looks like you might have all the Q's and all the A time today, unless someone else joins in a club seat. And that includes everybody in YouTube watching live. You're also welcome to please put your questions in the chat and I will get to them. So let's walk through some common knowledge about muscles and what goes wrong. And also, Anna, because you're here in the club seats, you get to be hot seated all by yourself, but I'm right here with you and you got this. I know you got this. All right. So let's, for example, in muscles and in movement, let's bring to mind, what is a primary muscle involved in gait, in walking? What's a primary muscle involved in gait and walking? What comes to mind for you, Anna?
Definitely glute max.
Glute Max. And I knew it, and it's your favorite, and I knew you were going to say it, and I love it. Yes, definitely Glute Max. So gait in itself as a movement, as a functional movement in the body, includes lots of joint actions and lots of muscles. We're going to focus down now on one of them, Glute Max, our homie, and we're going to walk through exactly how I teach you in muscles and movement and how I want you to learn muscles so that they're applicable and you could use them. And as I mentioned, this is true for all manual and movement practitioners. Sidebar here. Manual practitioners tend to know a whole lot of muscles and their attachment points, and they don't really consider them in function because it's just not what manual practitioners do. And movement practitioners do all the movement and get the movement done and get the movement bigger and maybe even increase muscle girth in the same setting, but they might not know the names of the muscles and what muscle's supposed to be doing the movement that they're instructing. So there's a place for all of us to meet in the middle. Where I like us to meet is, what's the muscle? What does he do? Who helps him? Who allows him? What happens when he goes wrong? And what do you do about it to remedy that? We all want to remedy the problem. This is the order that I think it should go in. So this is what we're going to talk about. We're going to use Glute Max as our main guy for exploratory purposes for today's conversation. So in Glute Max, while we're walking in the function of gait, let me say that more clearly, shall I? In gait, which is functional movement, Anna, you called Glute Max as one of the primary movers. What is he primarily doing in gait? Because we've already said there's lots of joint actions in gait and lots of muscles doing lots of things. What's Glute Max doing in gait?
Glute max helps your hip joint bring your leg into extension behind you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So does he help do that, or is he the main guy?
No, he's the agonist. So he's the guy who does that. So I've just taken out the word help.
Yep. So good.
That's his major function.
Yep. Main role, main claim to fame, main guy who's doing that. Why it's important to know, and I know you know this, Anna, why it's important to know the main action of a muscle is to be able to discern if the action is happening with the muscle who's supposed to do that action. If we don't know their prime action, we won't be able to tell if the action's happening optimally, and also where do we get to insert to remedy the problem. In order to remedy a problem, you've got to know what the problem is. To know what the problem is to know what the job is supposed to do and whether or not that job is actually happening. This is why I said we want to start with muscles, their joint actions, who helps them, who allows them, and then be able to ID if it's not doing, if the whole orchestra is not showing up to the stage that way. Okay, so glute max primary action is extension or hyperextension of the hip, and that looks like your leg is behind you. However, do you believe, Anna, and the rest of you here live with us today, do you believe that you can have your leg behind you and not have glute max powered up to do that job?
100%, and most people do.
100%, and most people do. So in order for us to figure out what then would that create, now we're into symptoms. So if glute max is supposed to do the job of hyperextension of the hip and he doesn't, something else did the job. But that's somebody meaning a muscle, that somebody else doing the job might not be symptomatic. So we might not even catch it at first. We need to be able to know what joint action is happening and what muscle does that job. So glute max, main guy, big wampin muscle on the backside of your hips. It makes up your booty and your booty shape primarily. He's the guy that pulls your leg back, which is actually hyperextension of the hip. When your leg moves back, the ball in the socket joint of the femur inside the acetabulum rotates and the leg moves backwards because the hip is moving. Now that's super important. That glute max, while it looks like the leg is going backward, the joint action is necessary to know. The joint action is necessary to know because, like you pointed out, Anna, we could just be shuffling along and not actually moving that ball in the socket at all, but still walk for miles and then be sore after we walk. Why? Well, a lot of us might want to blame the walking. Well, you walked too many miles. Not possible, guys. Not possible. There was a practitioner in my community a few short weeks ago who told one of their clients that they walked too much and that's why their back was aching. You guys, that's not possible. Walking doesn't cause that. The way you're walking is the problem. But the walking won't feel uncomfortable while every muscle is joining in to try to get the function to happen. It will feel overworked after the fact. And then it's easy to point back and blame the walking. It's not the walking. It was the muscle who's supposed to do the prime job doing it. And if not, what else was doing it? And then here's the real skill. Why? Why? So let's unpack this a little bit. So glute max is supposed to do the main work on the back of your pelvis to pull your leg back on that portion of gait. There's lots and lots going on in gait. We're going to break down one joint action and one muscle at a time. What muscles, Anna, this is back to you on your hot seat. What muscles help glute max? Because he's the main guy that does that joint action. What muscles help him?
Hamstrings and
Yeah.
QL.
QL does not help him, but QL would jump in if glute
Would
max.
jump, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And
Yeah.
so how do we know that? Because you learn your muscles and you learn their joint actions. So glute max, gluteus maximus, lives in this part of the body on the back of the pelvis, and his main action is hyperextension of the hip. Great, he's the main guy. Hamstrings live on the bottom of the pelvis and all the way down the femur and attach at the knee. And their job is to assist in hyperextension of the hip. Okay, so now we know we got one main guy, lead flutist. I used to play flute in high school, so the lead flutist is glute max in hyperextension of the hip. But then there's all the other flute players as well that are sitting in second seat, third seat, etc. And those would be the hamstrings. How do we know that? Because that's part of the memorization. Hamstrings do lots of things. And one of the things that they do, that's the tip off, that's their secondary job. They're the helpers. They're second, third, and fourth seat flute. They're not prime seat flute for this joint action. They help in hyperextension of the hip. Awesome. Okay, so now we know we got a main guy in seat one, and we got three guys in seat two, three, and four, all helping do this action of hyperextension of the hip. Should happen. Should absolutely happen. Except that we know the body's built like a lever, which an orchestra is not. And so who is the guy, the main guy, on the opposite side of the lever from glute max that allows glute max to contract in the first place? Who's that, Anna?
Psoas.
Psoas, exactly. So in order for glute max to contract, he's got to know to do that. He's got to be available to do that. And that joint action needs to be administered. Yay, we got it. And at the same time, he has a bunch of helper bees. He's got seats 2, 3, and 4 in the orchestra helping him out, the hamstrings. But even if Glute Max is doing his job and the hamstrings are jumping in to help, if the psoas is not allowing the lever to lever, then it doesn't matter how strong glute max and hamstrings are, the psoas will prevent that from happening. So now we're not sure what side of the lever are we looking at when the problem happens, but don't go there too fast, just learn the lever. So psoas needs to do what, Anna, when glute max is powered up to do his job?
It needs to lengthen.
It needs to lengthen.
To allow glute max to contract.
Exactly.
That's the lever.
That's the lever. It's exactly right. It's the lever on the agonist antagonists. Yep. And that's the lever part. We're bringing in reciprocal inhibition today, which is why we're talking more about the orchestra of all of them, because it's any one guy in the orchestra that could drop the note and the whole song doesn't work, right? So it's any one of these guys in reciprocal inhibition who might not be showing up to the musical that makes the sound not sound great or make the gait not actually be optimal. And you might not know that while you're in gait. You would know that, as we said, at the end after you've walked a few miles. And so this is really interesting, right? Because as soon as we want to do an action in the body will do it. Body will do anything you ask it to do, even at the risk of using the incorrect muscle to do it or at the risk of having created its own pain later on. And it will do that every time to the best of its ability. So by the time someone physically cannot do something, that is a grave injury because that means compensation and recruitment patterns have been exhausted and it's not available anymore. So why does that matter? Because y'all want to jump to what happens when it goes wrong. What do I do about it? Here's what you do about it. You learn all the parts that are supposed to play and how they start diverting their workload to someone else. And then when the problem presents itself, you'll know what happened. You gotta figure it out. There's not a checklist. If this, then that. It doesn't work like that. So glute max has to contract to do hyperextension of the hip. Hamstrings have to show up to help him. That's their job. Let's just pause there for a second and not even bring in psoas just yet. If glute max is coming in to do his job and the hamstrings are not strong enough, does glute max have full power to do what he's supposed to do? If his helper bees don't show up?
No.
No. Nope. So we could blame glute max or we could blame the hamstrings, or maybe we could blame neither and just know how to assess whether those muscles are showing up for the joint action on the table and whether or not they're showing up fully. And that's what you get to know in your client setting. So right now we're just memorizing muscles and joint actions, but the applicable part of it is go into that treatment setting and know how to A, ID those muscles, B, clearly see their joint action without any compensatory patterns, and then know what to do about it. Otherwise, you're just putting your client through an assessment and they did a lot of trying for you, but nothing really got remedied. And we don't want that. We actually do want to remedy we want to remedy the thing. Okay, so then we said psoas also has to allow it. Psoas has to lengthen and allow glute max and hamstrings in concert together to do their maximum work on the posterior side of the hip. In order for any muscle to contract, it must lengthen first. It can't contract from an already contracted place. So you need to be able to know and assess, is this muscle already contracted or not? And here's a big tip. Just because it feels tight doesn't mean it's contracted. Big, 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 big. If that's all you took away from today's training, I'm telling you guys, that's it. Go back to our videos here on YouTube and watch the types of tightness. Most tightness does not mean it's contracted, and most tightness does not need to be alleviated. That said, in order for a lever on muscles to lever, a muscle needs to lengthen after it's contracted, and then once it's lengthened, it needs to be able to contract, and you need to be able to assess whether both is happening. And manual and movement practitioners alike really still do default into this is tight, I've got to release it. I just had this conversation in our group training last week. Just because a muscle is under duress, even when you can identify that the duress is contractile, you still get to answer, how did that happen? Because none of these muscles that we're mentioning right now act like this out of the blue. They're doing that in response. That is a response to either a compensatory or a recruitment pattern because the body is doing whatever you asked it to do to the best of its ability. So we don't want to just go after a muscle because he's contracted. And we don't want to just go after a muscle because he feels tight. What we want to do is figure out, how did that happen? How did that happen? Why is the body choosing that as the now norm? It's not permanently normal, but why is the body choosing that? When we don't answer that question, that's when we make changes inside of a session and actually end up creating more pain and discomfort with our client. Because we just bring a muscle back online, or we force a muscle to stop being online, and then we leave the body's ability to balance itself, although skewed, we leave the body's ability to balance itself non-available. It's probably a better, stronger word I could use for that, but we now render it no longer helpful to itself, but we didn't make it helpful either because we didn't fix why it needed that in the first place. And that's the difference between just following a list of muscles, massaging them or stretching them, trying to get them to contract or not, and actually solving the functional problem. That's the difference right there, and being able to understand all of this. So again, I appeal to you guys. I want you to know your muscles, and I want you to know how they move, and I want you to know the relationship in between all of them so that then you can understand clearly and easily what happens when it goes wrong. Otherwise, you're just busy for the hour. And don't do that. Don't do that. Okay, so what else needs to lengthen then, Anna, when Glute Max is going into hyperextension of the hip? When Glute Max is creating hyperextension of the hip, we said psoas lengthens. Who else lengthens? Who else is involved on that side of the lever? Do you remember?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. The quad,
Which one?
the rectus femoris.
Yes, and that's
So
important.
yeah.
Only one. Yep, only one of the quads actually is biaxial and moves the hip. Yep, good. Who else? Who else has to lengthen?
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
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 Yes.
Wanted to say the sartorius, but I don't think it's that one.
Nope.
Oh,
A little higher up. I'll give you a hint. It shares an important part of the psoas, an attachment point of the psoas.
are you thinking the ilium? No.
Iliacus.
Iliac.
Iliacus. Yep,
Yeah.
inside the pelvic. Yep. So iliacus and psoas share an attachment point, which is why they're lumped together as iliopsoas at times. Although they do different things, they do share a role.
Mm.
So now we know that we have a prime mover on the back of the hip. We have helper bees, chairs 2, 3, and 4 in the orchestra, also known as synergists on the back of the hip. Then we have the other guy on the opposite side of the lever, psoas, and we have his concert of muscles that help him do that as well. So sometimes, for example, practitioners will say, oh, it's tight psoas. You guys really love to go after psoas for a lot of reasons, and that's cool. But sometimes it's not that the psoas is holding up the show because he's tight. Sometimes it's psoas is holding up the show because he's not strong enough. And in order for a muscle to contract, he's got to be strong enough, and he also needs to have lengthening in him to be able to contract. That's a whole relationship with that muscle. Like, is that muscle available, even available? And when he's not, he will use firsthand one of his synergists. So I know lots of people who have overactive rectus femoris muscles because their psoas is not showing up. Really tempting to blame the psoas and make him release, thinking he's too tight, when really what he needs is strength, and it's rectus femoris that needs to be released. So you guys, I want you to know that when you're with your clients, which muscle actually needs what from you. How do you know that? You identify the muscle, the joint action that it makes, the opposite side of the lever, everybody else that's involved, and you find your assessment skills to be able to assess which one in the orchestra is putting out the sour note that's making the whole song not work? Which one? And what does he need? What does that muscle then need from you? That's where your skill comes in. Your skill already, though, comes in being able to ID him in the first place. Otherwise, again, you're just busy. And I know you guys don't want to be busy. You tell me every week you want to create results. I want that for you too. So do your clients. Everybody wants you to create results. We're all in the same, yes, we want that to go, please. Here's how you create that. Here's how you create that. Know your muscles, know what they do, identify the clean joint action, identify when something's off, assess what's off, and then address what's off. Fix it. Fix it. So that's when you get to what is the nature of action? What is the nature of compensatory action? What do you do for a muscle that's compensating? Because remember, the compensation means that something's off in the lever. Do you just tell them to stop helping? No, you don't want to do that. You'll leave the body unable to do the thing he used the compensatory muscle for in the first place. And that's, I think, too late in the game to start exploring if you don't already know the muscles. Here's why I'll say it again. If you don't know the muscles just straight up, which is super fun to know, this is what he does, this is where he's at, look at him move, isn't that so cool? When you know that, then you can start to see when he's not doing that. But if you don't know who's supposed to do the job and you're just facing the problem, who can you assign the job to then? Who can you solve the problem with? What muscle? I'm talking about muscles because they're people to me. Who can you assign the job back to? Meaning, who can I tell move this way without pain so that I can help this client not be in pain if you don't know who to assign the action to? That's why I really believe we want to know the muscles and how they move and then be able to assess when they go wrong. Otherwise, you're just facing things are wrong and you don't really know what to do. And I hear from you guys, you're like, I want to help so much and I just don't know. And I get a little stressed and then I'm feeling like I don't know what I'm doing. And I hope that they left feeling better, but I'm not really sure. Nobody wants that for you. I definitely don't want that for you. You guys, we get to be like spot on experts. And when it comes to muscles, it's so easy. It's so easy because it's because they'll talk to you, like they'll give you feedback, they'll talk to you. So it's really like you're hanging out with a bunch of buddies in the treatment space. I think that's what Katie was referring to in her feedback, which is great. And the nature of injuries is a big nut to crack, and it's not impossible. But here's the truth, guys. When I first started teaching the Schatz method, which is the nature of injuries and fixing problems and returning biomechanics to optimal use, and that's what it's all about. When I first started teaching that, I realized that there wasn't enough anatomy base to be able to go there in conversation. I'm not saying anybody wasn't smart. They were very smart, clearly. They knew a bigger picture in mind. But we need to be able to assess, okay, so the client had pain when they did XYZ. What muscles do XYZ? Were they able to do that? Could you assess whether they were doing that? And then you found a muscle that wasn't. Now you go to solve it. Otherwise, what are you solving? And if you don't have the anatomy, you can't actually eliminate and bring to light what's actually at play. So it really does matter. And I don't want you to spend a whole lot of time memorizing your anatomy. If you want to get into the nature of injuries, you got to speedy Q get your anatomy so that you can get into the nature of injuries, because that's a whole contemplative, strategic thinking brainwave. It's so funny because over the weekend, over the holiday weekend, I had the privilege of doing body work that was not Schatz method work. And it was so much less thinking. It was so much less thinking. It was actually like, wow, this is like a lot lighter on my brain. And that's lovely and perfect and amazing. I also didn't solve anyone's pain. And I wouldn't want to entertain my brain that way day to day, a couple days a week. It would feel like I wasn't using this great part of my physiology that I really love. So the point is, in all of that, when you are solving pain, you must be able to think. It's a strategic thinking game. It's not a memorization list. And you can't solve the problem without the list, meaning you can't solve the functional problem without the anatomy to back you up, because that's where the answer is in what's gone wrong with the anatomy. So you've got to know the anatomy to solve it. So that's really why I think those of us who are doing this level of work, we're loaded with knowledge and skill because it really does require both. So if you think that you want to navigate pain and you want that to be easy for you, but you don't want to think hard, there's a gap in what you really are willing to create. That's my opinion for sure. So skills to remedy the problem and restore the problem require tons of knowledge going in, and then the ability to think through that as well. All right. Enough about me. Let's turn it over to you. You guys have some questions for me. I'm happy to answer them. Anna, did you come with questions today? You're first.
I had a note, actually, as I was sort of getting ready for this, because I love muscles. Like I love muscles. And I think they're a puzzle, and I love fitting the pieces of the puzzle together, and then when one piece doesn't fit, figuring it out. But I had a note, and I was surprised at that note, so I'm just going to read it to you because I think it has to be wrong. It says synergist muscles act, so synergist meaning like the hamstrings, right? Act around a movable joint to produce motions similar to or in concert with the agonist muscle, the glute max. That part's true. They often act to reduce excessive force generated by the agonist muscle and are referred to as a neutralizer. Isn't that's not true, is it? I mean, they help. So
what part's not true to you?
Well, the fact that do they act to reduce excessive force generated by the agonist? Are they a neutralizer?
At some level, yes. What source are you reading from?
I have no idea. It's a note that I put in my muscle and movement workbook, like right on the top. So I mean, I obviously read it somewhere and thought, oh, that makes sense, before I really thought about it.
Yeah. Well, it's not my language, so you wouldn't have heard it from me, but I'm listening to it and I'm like, it's not wrong. So here, I can just give you my opinion about it instead of telling you whether it's right or wrong. Notice your processor. Yeah, it's okay. So here's what I hear. Maybe I don't know if you got that from the coursework or not, but if you did, it would probably be a definition that I flashed on the screen to say this is what we know if you were to Google what's a synergist. If it's in the course. I don't know because you don't know where you got that from either. But it's not wrong. It's just not how I teach. And part of why I wouldn't teach it that way is because it doesn't actually explain it. It just sort of states it. And I like to explain things so that we can really know it, and then move with it. So if you just think about the lever itself, right? Like two muscles creating movement opposite each other. If you think about physics, that would require a tremendous amount of force, right? Like a teeter-totter, right? It's got to be kids have to be equally weighted for that teeter-totter to like oppose gravity and go down and then fly up without the kid at the top flipping off their seat. And that's always a game when you're in school, right? Because kids grow at different rates and then some kid will just be dangling at the top and like not actually make it. But to actually make a fulcrum, to actually make two things move across a fulcrum, it does require a tremendous amount of force. We know that from physics. So if you use that information from physics in your muscle knowledge, it would state then that each muscle opposite the lever, just single muscles, each muscle opposite the lever would have to have a tremendous amount of force to move an entire joint on its own. And we know that the brain is wired not that way. No muscle works by itself. We segregate them while we're learning them so we can just focus on one at a time, but they're not even wired that way from the brain, which tells us the body is smarter than physics because it knows that one muscle having to do all that on its own would be exhausting and it would leave a lot of room for error as well. As we just called out, glute max does the main hyperextension of the hip. What if he doesn't one day? You just don't walk then? What the hell? Right? Like it's not even efficient. It's not efficient design. And because of the sophistication of the design, that's why we get to be experts because it's sophisticated. The design is sophisticated. It's not simple. So When I'm hearing that it's a, what was the first phrase? Not the neutralizer, the what?
They often act to reduce excessive force generated by the agonist muscle and are referred to as a neutralizer.
Okay, so synergists, the helper bees that come in and help hamstrings, help glute max do hyperextension of the hip, they're helping the excessive force that would be required of glute max by himself if it was simply just a lever on a fulcrum. So they do help that. That is correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's really helpful for me, because Glute Max is my main guy.
Mhm.
And I always thought the synergist help, but yeah, just, they don't need to help. Isn't
Oh
that
God, no.
interesting? Yeah, like I thought that baby can do it on his own. He's got so much territory and he's attached to so many places.
He is attached to so many places, and we do focus a lot about that, Anna, in the Schatz method, which I know you are obviously well versed in. And so, because of his attachment points and what he affects by way of the pelvis, specifically the sacrum, you would have had a lot more focus on him. But isn't that interesting
Yeah,
that we could easily just dismiss a whole group of muscles and miss part of that in our assessment if we don't have the significance of those muscles in our knowledge bank?
you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
perfect
how,
example.
how incredible is it that, here I am today.
Yeah.
Remember that.
Oh, good. Yeah. And it's just a perfect example, right? Like of everything we've already talked about today. We get to know the muscles, we get to know who helps them, we get to know who allows them, we get to know what happens when they're in trouble, and then we get to recognize that there's a problem and then have the skill to solve it. It's also a perfect example of you do know the Schatz method because you're a graduate of our program proudly, and also you'll do better with that method when you know more anatomy. Right? We all will. That's exactly everything we just said today, which is so perfect. It's like perfect that you would bring that up to illustrate in real easy time, in like normal conversation. That's exactly what I'm pointing to here. I love this for all of us. It's like a perfect question for today. Perfect question. Did that answer your what you wrote down fully?
Abs- yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to change that last word, neutralizer. Yeah, that word does not work for me.
It might not work for you. I didn't address it though. So if that, and again, that sounds like it's an outside definition because that's not a definition that I recognize I would say.
No,
But a neutralizer, as a synergist, I would add, so think about, I would add that it creates smoothness in movement, like neutral, not neutral like non-existent, like not positive, negative, neutral, like even positive and negative, they have a charge. Neutral doesn't, not that kind of
right.
neutral. But
Okay,
neutralizer in movement, I would say it would make it smoother. It would make it fuller. It would make it more comprehensive. And
right. Those are good. Those are good because I'm thinking of neutralizer as you're taking out the major work of the psoas. Like you neutralize someone, like you stop them.
yeah, that's
So
that's your,
that's good, Gina.
isn't that interesting? That's your processor again, black, white, right, wrong. See, it's so great that it comes up because then you can see it and you're like, oh, I do that. Okay, great. And there's nothing, there's nothing wrong with it. Again, it's just that that's how we take in information, then that's what we do with the information. For those of you who are like, what are they talking about? We talked about that last week in Tuesday training, so you can go back and hear that at the end there. We talked about processors. It's really fascinating. And it matters to us to know what processor you're running with so that you can aid yourself in your learning, right? Just like this definition not having value for you at first blush, but then now there is value for you, and now it's opening up your anatomical knowledge, which means it'll open up your skill to do something about that anatomy, which is beautiful, right? When you know your processor, you can use that to support your learning. When you don't know your processor, you're kind of running blind and making errors for yourself and making it harder. We all, not you, Anna, but we all. So the neutralizer for joint action, if I think about the hamstrings and glute max for hyperextension of the hip, and I don't have Murph with with us today. He's here, he's resting upstairs. But if you think about the back of your hip, right? So here's the innominate on the back. Acetabulum is here and the femur sits inside there, kind of like at the bottom part of it, right? And so if we're doing glute max action, which is here, to do hyperextension of the hip, the femur is moving backwards in this way. And the hamstrings are covering the back of the femur. So isn't it interesting that an attachment point on a muscle kind of tapers down, right? As the tendon gets more concentrated and then localized for its attachment. But then if we have a fan breadth of muscles around that one solid point, it creates a more comprehensive movement. It's a broader, the whole thing moves instead of just one attachment point, just torquing where the glute max is engaged. Do you see that picture in your mind?
Yeah, no, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So now do you think you have to take out?
You found gray for me.
Oh, yay, Anna. Well, you found it because you were listening. So that's so good. Do you see now that you can keep neutralizer in that
I
definition?
do.
For
Yeah.
you?
It's just, yeah, it doesn't mean killing it.
Yes,
Like,
exactly.
yeah.
Killing it or dismissing it or making it wrong or letting it be something that can't support you. Yeah, for sure. And here, I'll just wrap us up with this. So that phrase definition requires explanation. Most things in the body require explanation. They just really do. When I'm teaching, I want it to be as applicable as possible so that you get it quickly and then can start applying it. It doesn't mean that my way is the only way, but notice that describing it the way you're used to, the way it did land for you, was an instant access. And here's, I'm bringing this up to you as a Schatz method practitioner specifically. And we also mentioned this for all of us here today as we're thinking about naming anatomical parts and their Latin. You can know something with a lot of depth, and like I do around muscles and movement and the nature of injuries. And I still want to be in relationship with you and partner with you on your understanding and describe it in a way that's going to land easiest for you so that you can then be in the conversation with me and we can go somewhere together. We want to learn how to do that with our patients and clients, and then still be open to another person's description, like this definition, and just pause for a second and be like, okay, how do I think through that? But not create that much work for your clients and patients to have to think through what you're saying while they're in pain. They don't have the capacity for that. They're in pain. You want to land it easily, simply, but clearly, and then bring them onto the solution with you. That's what I do when I'm teaching. That's why you resonated with the languaging and muscles and movement, because it was like, I'm going to give you all this information and I want you to have it and let's go with it. And then let it unpack, go deeper, keep using your bean, and then apply it. I like it for you and for all of us. All right. Thanks for bringing us a juicy question today, Anna. I appreciate you. Thanks for everybody else who's been here. I can still see that you guys are here live. Maybe you're taking copious notes. There were no questions that popped up in the chat. So I'll let you guys go for today. Do you want to just wrap us up and remind us we're on Muscles and Movement this month here in Tuesday training. It's also the course of the month inside the club. You're welcome to come and take the entire course and learn all 600 muscles and how to apply them. It's $49 for the month unless you sign up for the year, and you can always come as my guest for 7 days and get as much as you can in there. We also have lots of other training in there for practitioners, and we're leaning into a muscles challenge this month and also some casework. So we're going to be doing some client casework, which of course we need muscles for. So if you haven't joined us there yet and you want to, please do. And for those of you who are here and found value in today's training on Tuesday training, I love that. Please do let me know that it was valuable for you. And again, we are self-supported and self-funded here. So if you just like the video or thumbs up it or something to let me know that you're here interacting with the algorithm helps us so that we can reach all of you with our live notifications each week. All right, my friends, until I see you next time, enjoy your week, continue to do great work in the world, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye for now.